So this week's Parsha, every shir starts with that, right? This week's Parsha is. So we know, last week's Parsha, we'll start that way. Last week's Parsha was V'et Canaan. This week is Eikev. And I wanted to first say that we're going to do this week's shir in the honor of a very special young boy that had his Brit Milah today. From the Zafrani family, big mazel tov to them. And his name, just double checking here, is Asher Shimon ben Yehoshua Cohen. The Brit was today, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. So we're sponsoring, the Levy family is sponsoring the shir in the zuchut of his Brit Milah. He should be raised to Torah, Chuppah, Masim Tovim. He should be a warrior for Israel, for Klal Yisrael, and a big tzaddik, and he's already got a great start. So this week's we start with some very famous words. V'haya Eikev tishme'un et hamishpotim ha'ela ushmartem ve'asitem otam v'shamor HaShem Elohecha lecha et habrit v'et hachesed asher nishpa labotecha. Okay, basically meaning that these are the things that you should listen to, the ordinances, the rules, and so on. You should observe them, perform them, and then Hashem, your God, is going to make things well for you. He's going to safeguard the Brit, the covenant, and the kindness that He swore to your forefathers. So now we have to explore something. There's a very famous commentary on this word Eikev. This word Eikev, Rashi brings in that we're translating it. The normal translation is to be that, you know, that these things, when you listen to these things, when you do these things. So the word Eikev actually can mean heel, H-E-E-L, like the heel of your foot. And Rashi has a very famous comment on it, and he says that it's so that you should keep all the mitzvot that are the mitzvot that you would normally sort of disregard, that you would step on with your heel. So I want to explore a couple of different opinions on it. That's the famous Rashi comment, okay? The Ramban echoes that. And he also brings that Eikev can mean also the end. Meaning that when all is said and done, that, if you do things correctly, this is what's going to happen. And he says that just like we call the Rosh means the head, right? Our Rosh is our Kabesa, our head. And we have Rosh Yeshiva, we have that's the name for the head. So something that's at the end is going to be the Eikev, the heel. It's at the bottom, and we can see anatomically that's how it works. Okay, so that's the Ramban with a very nice comment on that. Now, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, he brings something very interesting. He says that we're just talking about Eikev and the heel. Okay, Oren Rachel just walked in, so come sit. So he brings Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. He brings that when we bring in and we follow the mishpatim and so on and so forth, okay, that even at the rock bottom, when we're at the bottom, we're going to get benefit. It's going to be something that's going to be good and follow us around. And he brings further is that we shouldn't weigh each mitzvah. In other words, it's very popular to want to say, this mitzvah seems like this is the big kahuna of the mitzvahs, you know? This is the mitzvah that we is going to give us the most reward, you know? In fact, there's only a couple of mitzvot in the Torah that even tell us a reward. One is we heard last week in the Ten Commandments to honor our parents, that is going to give us a long life. So he says the human nature is that we tend to say, you know what, I'll do this mitzvah, it's very important. But these other little things I don't have to worry about. And he basically is bringing the point similar to Rashi, that we don't know the reward for which mitzvah. We don't know if this mitzvah is going to be a big reward or not a big reward. And so he says we need to keep this in mind, that there are three things he brings here, that there's three stages. There is Shema, to hear it, right? There's also to study it, and then there's also to guard it, Shmora. To guard it, fulfill it, and so on. That's what we need to do with things, with all the mitzvot. So, okay, very nice. So now Sforno brings an opinion on this. He says that Moshe explains the reason. He says, why is he saying this? That we have to observe all of these things. He says that we're meant to observe them, not just out of anything else, but just out of a love for God. Not because we're going to get a reward for them. So right now, the Ramban says we don't know the reward. Moshe says, don't even worry about the reward. The Sforno says that Moshe is saying, we don't even know don't even worry about the reward. You do them simply because you should do them. It's the right thing to do. Okay? Very nice. And he says, where do we see this? We see this in the book of Bereshit, where Hashem says that I'm going to give my covenant. What's the word for covenant? Is habrit. He says, I'm going to give my covenant. I mention these words, by the way, because we're going to see something that ties it together, hopefully, all at the end. He says that this brit that I'm making, Hashem says, it's not just between you, when he's talking to Avram Avinu. He says it's also between all the children that are going to come after you. Yeah? Okay. This is all the children, generation after generation, right? Lador vador, as they like to say. He says, and that this idea, this covenant, this brit, this agreement, is strictly between Hashem and the Jewish people. Meaning that it's not between Hashem and the other nations. Hashem is there for the other nations, he supports the other nations, but the other nations, they get benefit from, we're called emissaries, okay? That they have horoscopes and the zodiac and all these things that affect them, right? Right? We say the Jews ain't mazel. There's no mazel, meaning not like we commonly translate it like they're like luck. You know, it's not that there's no luck. We're not lucky people in English. It means that we're not governed or controlled by these forces of horoscope and zodiac and things like that, and the superstitions, and we're going to read in a couple of weeks that we're not supposed to have any superstitions, you know. But the non-Jewish nations can be. They can be, okay. But our agreement is, right, as they say in Spanish, mano a mano, so to speak, you know, face to face, man to man. We're, you know, between Hashem and us. He's with us. And that's where he's bringing here. That's part of the idea of these mitzvah. And then he brings also, he echoes what we just read in the Ramban, that we're not doing this for reward. We don't know the reward. He says, and what? He says, therefore, we're doing it for now, but whatever reward there is going to wait for us in when? Olam haba. In the world to come. After 120 plus, 180, whatever, we're gone from this existence, so we're into the next phase of existence. You know, that's what happened. And Eikev says in the Gemara in Kiddushin that's exactly what it says. And finally, I'm not sure it's finally, but we're gonna tie this together. The Or HaChaim brings a couple of beautiful things. He says the Or HaChaim is, he asks a question. He says, this word Eikev, when it says when, you keep this, He says, or if you keep. He says, why does it use the word Eikev instead of im? Im meaning if. So it should have used if. He says that's one question he has.
I think Rashi talks about it, right?
Rashi talks a little bit, but Rashi talks about that it's the mitzvahs that you would trample with your foot and all like that. So we're giving different opinions on the word Eikev, because it's right. So and further, the Or HaChaim asks. He starts off with V'haya Eikev. V'haya Eikev. Why V'haya? And he says that whenever the Torah uses the word V'haya, meaning that it will be, that it implies something good, something that's pleasant, something that we should be happy about. Okay? So he's saying that, in the Or HaChaim brings, he says, so what is Moshe saying? He's telling the Israelites, telling the Jews, that we should not be rejoicing unless we're secure in our knowledge that we've fulfilled our relationship with Hashem. Because hopefully, just as an aside, we're going to learn exactly what it is, one of the things, I should say, that makes our relationship with Hashem so strong. And from there, we're going to get some tips, if you really read between the lines, on how to make our relationships with each other and with our spouses very strong. So I wanted to give you that little tease in there, okay? So this is the setup. We have to set things up, okay? So he says that you should know that as long as you're fulfilling what Hashem, then you can be happy about it. But if you're not really fulfilling what our obligations are, meaning the mitzvot, the mishpatim, all the different things that we're supposed to do, then we can't really have that full happiness of our relationship with Hashem, because our relationship is lacking at that point, okay? And Eddie brings something else that's very interesting. He says, remember, this is not 20 years ago, this is hundreds of years ago, Or HaChaim says, and even longer. He brings up something that's in the Gemara of Sota. He says that what? He says the Mishnah there says, uses that at the end, Echavotai, right? That at the end of things, so it's Eikev, the same word basically. The time preceding the arrival of Mashiach, what's going to happen? He says that disrespectful behavior is going to be the norm in the world. So we don't have to look too far from the headlines to see that now. So just as a little bit of a side, and he brings this a few hundred years ago, and now we see that, it's so prevalent, the disrespect in the world for each other, and certainly for the Jews that, like they should be so that we are right at the cusp of Mashiach arriving, okay? Now, he says that one other thing is that when we're learning Torah and we're doing this, it needs to be done with joy. And so much so, he says in Pirkei Avot, right, we have a mitzvah that when we perform the commandments, we have to do it with joy. It has to be done with joy, and we have to increase our joy. The more mitzvot we do, the happier we become, because we're serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And we know we're doing the right thing. So now our joy is increasing. Now, he also brings the Zohar. Zohar, all the mysticism, as my Ashkenazi rabbi says, the Sephardic voodoo. But it's not really Sephardic voodoo. It's a joke, but he's really, right? He says, he brings the Zohar.
Hippy dippy.
Yeah, the hippy dippy stuff, right? All that, right? But no, it's really, but serious. We see that there's a lot of good things in here, right? That there's no joy that we could have before Hashem compared to the joy that Hashem experiences when we learn Torah. Okay? When we're learning Torah, that's giving such eminent simcha to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's amazing. This is the Zohar, right? And he says, and at that point, it leads to the whole world embracing, the Zohar says, the mitzvot of Hashem. And then another thing where we're using this word Eikev, he says it's a hint to something else. What would be the humblest part of the body, arguably, would be the heel. It's your contact with your body in the ground. It steps on things. It gets dirty when you walk around, it gets stuck with stickers and steps on rocks and all these things. He says, so what? So Moshe is hinting with the word Eikev that when you're doing the mitzvot, we just said that you can't really have joy unless you're doing the mitzvot. But when you're doing them, you have to have humility. Humility is key, and that's represented by the word Eikev, that our heel. Because that humility enables us to really connect with Hashem. It's very easy. I know I've said this before. There was a big thing in the news when we had a different president. I'm not getting political here, but this other president said, you didn't do that. We did it. And you know what? He made a point. Whether or not you agree with Obama politically or not, he made a point. I'm not saying his political point was good, but we cannot, with the message here, is that we don't say, we did it. Everything comes from Hashem. Everything's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The fact that we were able to do a mitzvah, that, Hashem gave us the koach. He gave us the strength, He gave us the power, He gave us the insight, He gave us the learning, the rabbis that are encouraging us, that are helping us, He's giving us all these things so that we're able to do that. So it's a very, very important thing. And further, it brings in the Zohar, says, remember, it's not because of your righteousness that all this happens. Hashem made you for this mission. So we're getting from one word a whole lot of ammunition here of what it means. Okay, now, finally, let's make sure I'm in the right place in my notes. We have another pasuk that is talking about being stiff-necked. Okay, that Moshe says, you've been stiff-necked. We've heard this before. Shem calls us a stiff-necked people. Meaning, this is what does it mean? The Sforno brings, it means like somebody that won't turn and look at his teacher because his neck is so stiff he can't turn his head. Meaning that, it's my way. I want to do it. I want to be in charge. I don't agree with what it says in the Torah. I don't agree with what Hashem wants. The rabbi said this, and I know it's halakha. I don't agree with it. And I can tell you I've heard that on numerous occasions from different people. And I think that everybody, each one of us, at some point in our life, that thought maybe has crossed our head. This doesn't make sense to me. Why do I have to wait 6 hours after I eat meat before I could eat dairy? Especially, there's some people that wait an hour, some people that wait 3 hours. Why is it me that, we could come up with all of these different things that we go, doesn't make sense. So and I want to do it my way. And I met a guy a number of years ago, pretty learned guy. And he would sit there and he'd quote the Gemara and this, that, and the other thing, and he would say, but I don't do that way. I don't hold that way myself. So what do you mean you don't hold that way? This is the rabbi said, these are guys that are much more brilliant than we ever, can hope, I think, in many, many ways. At least I'll speak for myself, And remember, there were no computers. There was no libraries of reference and stuff like that. I mean, they had libraries, they had things, but, so much of it was from memory. I mean, how did they, the brilliance of what they did, and they didn't have it easy. I sit behind my computer and I got Sforno, I could go online, or I could sit behind my computer and I could work all day, and then I got time, I got electric lights that burn till midnight or whatever it was, the different lifestyle, okay? So he says that's one of the things about being stiff-necked rather, and it's somebody that follows their own heart as opposed to what we're supposed to do. So later on, we're going to see two things with this that are going to turn it upside down. Now we have another pasuk. We turn to it. That was the stiff-necked pasuk. Now we have in the middle of the parsha, at the beginning of the beginning of the fifth aliyah. It says, "V'ata Yisrael ma HaShem Elohecha shoel me'imach ki im yir'a et HaShem Elohecha lelachet b'chol derachav ולהבה אותו ולעבוד את השם אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך." Wow. Moshe says, and now, Israel, very famous pasuk. Now, Israel, what does Hashem, your God, ask for you? But except to fear Hashem, your God, to go in his ways, to love him, and to serve Hashem, your God, with all your heart and with all your soul, to keep his commandments of Hashem, his statutes, and everything you're commanded for your benefit. So it just sounds like, Moshe's throwing it out there. You only got to fear him. That's all you got to do. Like, this is some easy thing, You think about it. How do I become Yirat Shamayim? We've talked about this topic in the past couple weeks here and there. So now it's really forefront. Moshe is telling us, we want to be successful. We got to fear him. Okay? And Rashi brings here, what do the rabbis come from this? It said everything, this is a Gemara in Brachot. Gemara in Brachot says, I didn't see what it says, I'm sorry. I'm getting a note passed to me. Okay. The Gemara in Brachot brings on 33b, it says, the rabbis tell us that everything is in the hands of Shemayim. Everything's in the hands of God except Yirat Shemayim. Very good. Yirat Shemayim. This is what's in our hands. So this sort of gets into the whole free will debate too, right? The free will debate of, do I have free will or not? And we'll save that for another shir. Okay? And there's some opinions though on this that it says, yeah, we don't have free will in what happens, but except for how we do it, how we do things. Okay. Now, so we got Rashi in there. Now the Ramban, okay, he says what? He says all that Hashem. He says when it says only that you should fear Hashem, he says meaning that you're not doing this for the sake of Hashem. To have yirat, right? We've talked about the different kinds of yirat, different kinds of fear or awe. He says, you're doing it for your sake. Oh, meaning what? If you're righteous, what do we have to give Hashem? Right? He's Borei Olam. He created everything. What do we have that we can actually give him that he doesn't have? Relationship. Okay, very good. We're going to get to that. See, or you're read ahead. You're cheating. I know. That's why you're so great. You're great here. You always have right. Okay, you're prepared. Okay. But he's saying that all of this is, Ramban is saying all of this is for your own good. To listen. Okay. Now. And Rabachia also brings up the same. Now, we're going to skip ahead in my notes to the Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim brings the most beautiful thing. Orach Chaim says what? He says there are two different levels of serving Hashem. Level A, the lower level, and we read this from the Bat Ayin. We talked about it in the Bat Ayin a few weeks ago. I think it was a Parsha Pinchas, I'm not sure. But he says, you can serve Hashem out of fear. I'm afraid if I mess up, fire and lightning and, thunder and hail and brimstones and all the stuff, all that is, that's one level. I'm afraid of the punishment. It's okay. It says, or the next level, the higher level is what? Out of love. It's a different kind of relationship. Now we're starting to see about relationships. See? Now we're getting relationships. You read ahead. So we could see this starting to take shape, not just between our relationship with us and Hashem, but let's also think about it, our relationship with each other, our relationship with our parents, with our children, with our spouses, our brothers, our sisters, everybody. Okay? That, would you want your child, and this is the next part of what the Or HaChaim is going to bring. As a metaphor, would you want your child to obey you because they're so afraid of you that if I don't obey, they're going to slap me, they're going to this, they're going to that? Or would you want them to follow what you say because they love you so much that it's for you? I think we all know the answer to that. That we want it out of love. That's the higher level. So the Or HaChaim is bringing this. And he brings something interesting. He says, you have to start with the fear, the first level. You can't just go from 0 to 60 like this. You have to ramp up. You can't jump off the high diving board into the deep end of the pool and not know how to swim. So the first thing is to start with some good fear. So as an analogy to your children, our children, right? They go to do something wrong. For example, you have a young baby, in Baruch Hashem, we have a new grandson, and he's going to go do something that's dangerous to him. For example, touch something that he shouldn't touch. Maybe he's going to get burnt. Something's hot, and you can't get to him. So you're going to say, stop, stop. You want to get their attention. And maybe he gets a little fearful, but it's for his own good. Okay, so that's one level. But maybe at the next level, it's not something that's dangerous. It's just something that, for example, I'll give you a really good example that we have in Judaism. The head of the house usually has his chair, okay? So this is my chair. Mm-hmm. So we have to respect our parents. So out of love, not because, I'm not going to sit in my father's chair, not because I'm afraid he's going to hit me, but I love him so much and I respect him so much and I'm in awe of who he is. And I would say the same about our mothers too, that we should have that same feeling. I'm using father as an example. Especially my wife's right here, I got to make sure.
Look.
Yeah. And believe me, if anybody I'm afraid of, no, I'm joking. At any rate, so, but at any rate, you love your father so much, and I want to think about sitting in his chair. It's his chair. That's where he is. That's his place. That's his makom. That's it. So that's an example out of love. Okay. So the Or HaChaim is bringing. We have these two things in there, and this is where we get into the relationship. Or HaChaim brings something beautiful. He quotes the Tehumah Korach. And he says, when we're looking at all of this, remember what the pasuk says. It says, "Patay Yisrael ma HaShem Elohecha, ma mem he." He says, don't read it as ma. He says, read it as me'ah, 100. Right? So we're going to add an aleph in there.
I've always been confused by that because, if it's from the Torah, right? When rabbis, right. I get what rabbis are trying to say, but they say don't read it as. I mean, if it didn't want it read as, it wouldn't have been like. Oh,
because remember, the Torah has no nikudot. There's no vowels in the Torah. So we're going by the pronunciation that has become passed down, right. Minhag. But if there's a word that you could pronounce differently, the letters are still there. So he's saying, read it as me'ah. And if you add an aleph between mem and hey, What's Aleph? Aleph is one. Who's one? HaShem. So Me'ah, but also now translates to 100. So what are we saying 100? What's 100? Oh, the Chumah Korach says what this 100 refers to? The 100 brachot that each Jew is supposed to say every single day. Wow. Okay? So this is really really special. Now, it also brings, and I left it in the other room, so you're going to have to take my word for it, the Balaturim, who's the master of gematrias. He has a whole thing, and he brings the gematria is also 100. Okay? Meaning it says, I think, lech lech. Lech is 50, and the next lech is 50, right? Therefore, it's also 100. Meaning 100 brachas. Now, wow, what's this have to do with anything we said, relationships, everything else like that? Now we're going to get into some meat. Whole idea, why do we say a bracha? There's a number of different reasons, right? One of the reasons the Gemara in Brachot brings down that if you eat anything without saying a bracha, it's like you stole from Hashem. Okay, that's one of the reasons it brings down. Another reason it brings down, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, when you make a bracha, and sometimes there's this is one of the mystical, stuff, that there in foods there are nishamot that are reincarnated into inanimate objects. And if you have an apple and you say the bracha of ha'etz on the apple, if there happen to be a neshama reincarnated into that apple, it's a very wild concept. I'm not asking everybody to buy into it right now, but okay, but it's brought down. Then you free that neshama to go on to its next thing. And by the way, if you look at the Amidah on Yom Kippur, it actually talks about that, the different gigulim, and that there's a gigul of being in an inanimate object. Okay, so this is not, it's got a mainstream spot. We'll put it that way. Okay, now, as means of this bracha, 100 brachot a day. David HaMelech brings it down, and we're not going to get into how to do that unless you want to. We could do that in the halacha class. We've done it in the halacha class. It's on Tuesdays. By the way, a quick plug: we have a halacha share every Tuesday at 7:30. That goes 7:30 to 8:15, and we could explore those things then. At any rate, by means of explanation, I want to give you a story. It's a little bit of a long story. I heard this story originally from Rav Shlomo Carlebach, who, when I was a kid, I was sat at many Shabbat tables with him, literally across the table from him, and that's a story for another shir. But I know there's a little controversy surrounding him, which I'm not going to get into, but he was brilliant and motivated, many people, myself included. And at any rate, he told this story. The story is about Yaakov and Meir. Two guys, best friends growing up. Now this story takes place in the Ukraine. It's a very Hasidic story. It takes place in the Ukraine probably 200 years ago. Now, these guys were like brothers. Brothers from another mother. They grew up, everything was great. They went to school together, went to cheder, they learned everything. And as they got to be 19, 20 years old, and it was time they were starting to think about marriage, they each found a girl. And within a week of each other, one got married after his Sheva Brachas was over. The other one got married, and they danced at each other's weddings, and they were brothers, for life. And as time goes on, they're living in this town. Yaakov becomes a tailor, and Meir becomes a jeweler. This is how they earn their parnassah. So, as more and more kids come along, the families were, Shabbats together, very close. It was apparent to Meir, the jeweler, he needed more money, and there's only so much jewelry in a small Ukrainian town you're going to sell at any one time. Mm-hmm. When it's you and your wife, okay, somebody got engaged, hey, it's a ring, somebody got married, okay. But now, you got 5, 6 kids, it's not so easy. The ring doesn't, the ring you sold, the money doesn't go as far. When it came to Yaakov, the tailor, okay, Everybody always needed clothes. It wasn't like today, you went to Macy's and you bought a new suit and you went into the sale or anything. There, people made clothing for it, and he had to repair clothing, and he was always busy. So one day, Meir comes to Yaakov and he says, listen, I got a problem. He says, I can't make it here anymore. There's not enough parnassah. But there's a town. It's about a 5-6 day journey from here. And it's located in a port city. The boats come up there, ships, and then there's a huge train station. People come from overseas, they come off, they go through the town, they get on the train, they go wherever they're going. He says, there, I'm going to be able to make a living. So I'm going to be able to make a living. He says, how? Because look, people are always buying souvenirs for their wife. I know, when I used to travel for work, I'd come back. I always brought a souvenir for my wife, always brought a souvenir for the kids, A little hint for you guys that travel for your relationships, doesn't have to be big and expensive, but okay. He says, so this is what the guys were doing in this little town. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? So they talk about it and they make a deal. He says, when are you leaving? He says, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. We're going to leave on Sunday morning, and I'll reach town by Thursday night. I'll have a little bit of a day to settle in, and then I'm off. So, okay, let's make a deal. Every week, we're going to write to each other. We got to stay in touch. Remember, no phones, no texting, nothing like that. Done. So the big day arrives, they hug, they kiss each other, the tears are coming down their eyes, and that's it. Meir leaves with his family. And every week, Meir writes to Yaakov, and every week, Yaakov writes to Meir. But we all know what happens as time passes. Every week turns into every other week. Every other week turns into once a month. Once a month turns into every 2-3 months, and before you know it, 5 years have passed. And they're not in touch like they used to be. But, it's like anybody that's truly a brother, you could go years and years without seeing each other. When you're back together, it's like nothing happened. So one day, Meir gets an idea. He says, listen, here's what we're going to do. There's a town between our 2 cities. 3 days journey for me, 3 days journey for you. We'll both leave on a Sunday morning. We'll reach it by Tuesday evening the latest. We'll spend till the following Tuesday night or the following Wednesday, spend a week. You and I will catch up, we'll see each other, we'll visit, we'll see how our families are doing, all this, everything. It's great, done. They make the date, they both leave. Sunday morning, boom, they go. And Yaakov arrives Tuesday evening, he gets to the town, and the town had this big fence around it. In those days they had gated cities. This was a gated city, and he gets up to the gate, and the gate's closed, and he pounds on the gate, and a little window opens up, and the guy comes out, he sticks his face, and he goes, what do you want? And Yaakov says, listen, I'm meeting my friend here, I need a place to stay, the inn, I'm supposed to go there, we're going to have dinner together, and I goes, The guy at the gate says, listen, the sun's set. Once the gate's shut, it's shut, that's it, we don't open for anybody. I don't know who you are. He says, what do you mean? He goes, come back in the morning. Come back in the morning. What am I going to do? Where do I sleep? He goes, listen, right over here, there's a little stable. You can put your horse in there. And there's some hay, make yourself a little place to sleep. There's a little place you can get water, and that's it. So what's he going to do? There's no choice. He makes a little bed for himself. He prays Ma'ariv, Arvit, and he gets settled in. He gives his horse some hay, some water. He drinks some water. He takes a little bit of food, and he nestles himself to sleep. Early in the morning, the sun is just rising. He hears yelling, shouting, screaming. Everything's crazy, He says, what's going on? What's going on? It's all coming from the town. So he goes up to the gate and he pounds, and the little window opens. He says, what's going on? The guy says, what do you want? He says, what's going on? I hear the yelling, the bells ringing, everything is, because you won't believe it, the Poritz was murdered. The Poritz was like the mayor of the town. How did you get to be the mayor of the town in those days? You were the guy with the most kesef. You had the money, right? So he says, who did it? I says, what's going on? He says, I don't know the guy's name, but he's a stranger in town and he's a Jew just like you, and he did it. So Yaakov's like, I got to see what this is. So they let him in. And he says, well, where's the guy? He says, he's just finishing the trial now. They're going to bring him down in a minute, and then they're going to kill him. So, whoa. So, a few minutes later, they escort this Jew down from the trial, and they take him in the middle of the town, and they tie him to a tree, and everybody from the town is taking all these rotten tomatoes and stuff, and they're throwing him, and throwing these tomatoes at him, and splattering all over. Right, and Yaakov's like, I gotta see who this is. And he gets close enough to see it, and he goes, Meir? Meir, it's impossible. It can't be Meir, my friend, my brother, Meir. No way. So what does Yaakov do? He goes to the police. He goes, you got the wrong guy. So what do you got the wrong guy? He's a stranger, he did it. No, you got the wrong guy. The police said, how do you know? He goes, I did it. He couldn't stand to see his brother. He says, I did it. Whoa. Now the police have a confession. They weren't necessarily the brightest police in the world, but they knew a confession trumped up charges. Okay, we got a confession. They arrest Yaakov. They let Meir go. And Meir can't wait to get out of town, obviously, but he knows he's supposed to meet Yaakov. So he says to the police, what happened? He goes, we got a guy admitted to doing it, and he's a Jew like you. So now, Meir's curious. Who would do something like this and admit to it? So right away, the trial's going on. Boom, 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 chick-chack, it's over. They bring down Yaakov. They strap him to the tree. People take the rotten tomatoes. They throw it at Yaakov. He gets splattered all over his face. Meir goes to see who it is, and he goes, Yaakov? Impossible! No way! Police, I got to talk to you. You got the wrong guy. What do you got the wrong guy? The guy admitted to it. I know the guy. He's Meshuggah. He's crazy. Doesn't know what he's talking about. So what do you mean? He goes, I did it. Meir, we had you on trial. You said you didn't do it. He goes, yeah, thought I'd get away. Now we see this. I did it. So the police, wait a minute. So they arrest Meir. They're going to get ready to release Yaakov. But Yaakov sees they arrested Meir. And Yaakov goes, what are you arresting him for? I did it. 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 Police are going crazy. They don't know what to do, right? The judge doesn't, he says, I don't know what to do. One crime, two guys admitting to it. One was here, one was there. Impossible. So it goes to the next court. And it goes up the judicial system of Tsarist Russia until it gets to the Tsar himself. And now, this is the big trial. They go into the Tsar. They go into the Tsar, and the Tsar says to him, tell me what's going on. Tell me how this is working. So they tell him, I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. The Tsar says, something's not right here. Clears the room. Gets everybody up. Says, guards, everybody. Just the Tsar, Yaakov, and Meir. And the Tsar was sharp. This guy happened to be sharp. And he said to him, listen, I have a feeling I know what's going on. He said, Meir, you didn't do this, did you? And Yaakov, you didn't do it. And they both went, no, we didn't do it. So why would you do this? Why would you admit to killing somebody that you didn't do, to a crime like that? They said, listen, this is my brother. From the time we're kids, he's been my brother. I've loved him. When I saw him arrested for it, I said, no way. I can't let him go. I can't let them put him to death for something I know he didn't do. They both said the same thing. They look at the Tsar of Russia. The Tsar's got tears streaming from his eyes. And he says, listen, I want you to know something. I'm the Tsar of Russia, the most powerful country in the world. Anything I want, I could get. I want delicacies from around the world. I snap my fingers, they bring it. I want a new wife. Bring me the most beautiful woman in the world. I want jewelry. It's made for me right away. Anything I want, it's done. But I don't have a friendship the way you guys do. Do me a favor. Can I be part of your circle? Just make me one of your friends. This is what a Kodesh Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people. Borei Olam, I created everything. Anything I want to create, I could do. But there's one thing by definition I can't create. I can't create a friend. So I create somebody that's going to love me unconditionally, then it's not really a friend. They have to love me on their own free will. That's the yirah. We have the love, the yirah of fear, or the yirah of love. And that yirah of love is what connects us to Hashem. That's when we're in the inner circle. It's Hashem and the Jewish people. No intermediary, nobody else. That's what we do. And by doing so, we become, this is my own opinion, but I'm going to put it out there. We take away, there's a pasuk in this parsha that says that you should circumcise your heart and it will get rid of you being stiff-necked. Circumcising your heart, right, means cutting a little piece off, make an opening. Make an opening for Hashem to be in there always. Always. And if you could do that, you won't be stiff-necked in the way that I don't understand it and I don't agree with it. You're going to be stiff-necked in another way. The kind of stiff-necked approach that hopefully every husband and wife have for each other, every son and daughter have for their parents, which is, you know what? I love you so much, I can't see anything else but love for you. And no matter what happens, even if you do something stupid, something I don't understand, even if you want me to do something I don't understand, but it makes you happy, I'm going to do it. I'm going to defend you no matter what. I'm going to be by your side. And this is what we're saying. Let that Brit that we have, the Brit of our heart, go. And then the Yirat that Moshe is saying, all that Hashem asks is to have the fear of Hashem. Right? The Or Chaim says, it's not Yirah, right? He brings very closely, very, very much here, a good point that he says, it's not Yirah ve and love, it's Yirah that leads to love. They're connected, they're united. So if we can have that, then we really fulfill the mitzvah. And when he says only, it sounds like it's simple, but it's not. But it's the only thing, because the one thing leads to another, and leads to all the mitzvot. And the reason I brought up brachot is because that's our connection. Every mitzvah is a connection to Hashem. I don't want to belittle it. But this is one of those types of mitzvahs that go to the heel of our foot. I want to take a drink. I didn't say the bracha. I took a drink. I didn't say the bracha achrona, the after bracha. You know, I let it slide. It's okay. I know I'm looking for a way. I'm going to eat pizza, but I'll have a slice and 3/4, so I don't have to wash, and I don't have to say Hamotzi, and I don't have to say Birkat Hamazon. You know, all these things. You know what? You want that relationship? You take all the little details, because that's what makes the relationship special. We see that with our wives, with our husbands, right? And with our children. You know, there's something little that's very important to anybody you love. Those are the things they remember. You know, hey, he bought me a car. My dad bought me a car once. Okay, that's nice. My dad didn't buy me a car, by the way, but, but those are the things, those are the big things. Okay, yeah. But you know what? It's those moments when you're really sad and your mother, your father, your husband, your wife comes and they comfort you. Or your son or your daughter comes and says words of comfort. The little things that solidify that relationship. It's the little things between us and Hashem. And we have the power to do it. So in the honor of the Brit of Asher Shimon ben Yehoshua HaKohen, who we're doing the shir for, the little guy that was amazing, today at the Brit, and you see this beautiful face that just as soon as the moil cut him. By the way, I just want to say this is a story. I was right up there. I was helping hold the bottle to keep him calm, and as soon as the moil finished, he had this look on his face that was so serene, like a little tzaddik. Just knew it cemented. Now I'm complete. That's what a brit does. It completes who we are. A man completes who he is physically. The brit that we're talking about now, the brit to circumcise our heart, to cut that little part off and make the opening for Hashem, that completes who our neshamas are. So here at Tzon, we should all be able to do that. It's not going to be easy. Have to do it one mitzvah at a time, one little step at a time, and use the word step purposely. One little step. We do it, we see it, and we should see now that the Eikev that we go through is really the doorway and the gateway to Mashiach. In Kenyan Son. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.